Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Way of Life podcast. I'm your host, Gus Holland. Today, I really wanted to talk about compound versus isolation exercises. Basically, to put it in layman's terms, isolation exercises, they're basically exactly what they're called. Isolation, that's like a bicep curl. You're specifically targeting just the bicep. Compound exercises, that's like doing I would say a squat, because you are targeting your lower body primarily, but you're also engaging your core, you're balancing the bar on your shoulders, and you're incorporating a lot of spinal flexors, hip flexors, and your legs, obviously. So in my personal opinion, isolation exercises, I really think you should do both, but isolation exercises, should probably be your focus if you're solely focused on aesthetic mass, muscle gain, like bodybuilding. You still do squats and deadlifts and other things like that which are compound movements to build up that muscle. But I would say isolating a specific muscle group or a specific muscle really gets that mind muscle connection going. So for example, in bodybuilding, if there's several heads to your tricep, so if you're lacking in one, you can specifically, either flare out your wrist when you're doing a cable pull down, to target a specific weak point in your physique. And that's like getting really deep down into specifics. But that would matter if you're competing in a bodybuilding competition, or you just notice that you have a weakness, so not a good example of isolation versus compound, but a good way to specifically focus on your calves, since that seems to be a lot of people's weak point. And it's not really a lot of people's weak point, but I'll get into that later. But if you're sitting and doing a calf raise as opposed to standing with all the weight on your shoulder, where you get ready to do a squat and you just stand there and you do calf raises, or you load up a leg press machine and you've got all that weight also on your hips and knees and everything like that. It takes a lot more weight on those exercises to be transferred, to do the same amount of work on your calves as it would if your gym or you're maybe at home, you had a seated calf raise machine, because you're just seated there. You're sitting there, sorry. And the weight is, your legs are bent. So you don't have the risk of, and it's more of an isolation exercise because you're just targeting your calves. And you're not putting that massive amount of weight on your knee. It's still on your knee, but it's not in a position that could potentially cause you to hyperextend your knee or, cause some crazy injury, because you could put three 45-pound plates on a seated calf raise, or you can load a leg press machine with like 700 pounds and calf raise that. And you're probably, and that's just like crazy ballpark numbers, or whatever. But my point is that you can do less weight and achieve the same amount of work on your calves by isolating specifically your calves. And you're also protecting your joints and bones and shit. But I got kind of on a tangent there, but compound exercises I like to incorporate them. I like to have 1 or 2 days based on functionality and overall fitness. I would say I lean more towards like the bodybuilding spectrum, but I'm not looking to compete or anything. But I would, I am striving towards, massive arms, massive thighs, stuff like that. But at the same time, I still want to be able to run if I need to without needing an inhaler. So for me, it's kind of like trying to find that balance. So I do incorporate functional, I guess it's such a corny term to me, but like functional fitness, basically. So that the days where I focus on that, contain a lot of compound movements, and you can do compound movements without, putting a crazy amount of strain on your body. I mean, and it's all about your goals, like if you're, a 100-pound female that doesn't want to, doesn't focus on strength and size, and you just want to like look better, feel better, then there's no need for you to be trying to like deadlift, 2 or 3 times your body weight or something like that. So you could focus more on functional fitness, meaning things that would translate into everyday life. So, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but like you could grab some dumbbells and do a farmer's walk. I mean, you got to carry groceries inside. You know what I mean? You can, push-ups. I'm going blank on shit right now. I'm tired, but the whole point is to, I guess it's more focused on fitness, specifically, and not necessarily just being like a big ass dude or the strongest guy in the gym or whatever. So, that being said, though, compound movements aren't just reserved for people that want to, I guess, be lean and run around fast, I would say compound exercises would be something good to focus on to build your strength, in order to go heavy on isolation exercises. So, if you're building your strength in squats, you're going to be able to probably calf raise more weight for reps and do more work on your calves without, while minimizing injury risk. Because the main thing about fitness in general is being able to continue. Like, you don't want to get an injury and have to sit out for depending on seriousness, anywhere from 2 weeks to over a year, because you just end up losing what you've been working towards. And if it's long enough, it can actually just change your behavior patterns. So the main thing is consistency, and being strong in compound movements allows you to really hit those isolation exercises hard. Basically, if you're doing, we'll take dumbbell rows, for example. You bend over and you're rowing the dumbbell and squeezing your shoulder blade together, or squeezing it towards your spine. So that's really working your back and shoulder, but it's also doing a little bit on your chest. It's doing a lot on your bicep, and it's like if you're doing it with your right arm, you're hitting a lot of the right side of your body. You're engaging your core. You're working your back, your shoulder, your bicep, all that. So that exercise is a compound exercise that builds the strength of all of those individual parts. So if you keep going up in strength on a dumbbell row or a T-bar row, then just by doing that, you're automatically strengthening your bicep and your shoulder, your back, everything. So, yeah, that's really the best I can do for an example right now. Compound versus isolation. The whole deal is you should incorporate both of them, but you should probably skew towards one side or the other depending on your goals. Bodybuilding is going to be, everything's going to be a combination, but bodybuilding is probably going to be more towards isolation, while CrossFit is probably going to be more towards compound. If you are a running athlete, you're probably going to be doing compound, full body type exercises to strengthen yourself and improve your cardio for your running. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the fundamentals of fitness. I have two younger brothers that are playing high school football now, and it kind of like I got into a conversation with them about that, and basically how, I'm not going to say every coach or whatever, it doesn't really fucking matter, but I don't know anybody that was taught proper breathing technique by their coaches, or how to properly engage your core when doing those compound exercises so you don't get a hernia or something. Everyone I've ever talked to that was on a football team knows at least one person, normally more than one person that was on their team that got injured during training, So I would say, this isn't talking shit about coaches or football or anything, but it's bringing to light the fact that fundamentals of fitness are greatly overlooked, and especially at the young ages or whatever. So it's kind of much, like much of the schooling system, the true responsibility falls upon the person, the individual themselves, to learn. I'm not going to go into depth on breathing technique and stuff like that, really, but there's a bunch of videos that you can find on YouTube about proper breathing. And there's exercises out there that are also free to learn, to increase your lung capacity and to, improve your functionality when it comes to sports. for me, I haven't talked about it on this podcast. I had on a previous one, but I was born with chronic lung disease. Basically, that's the chronic lung disease is a broad thing. That's kind of like saying I've got cancer, and they're like, well, what type of cancer? Because it can affect people differently. But the reason mine is non-specific is because basically I had all of the symptoms of cystic fibrosis, but without the genetic marker. So that means don't have cystic fibrosis, because it's that's genetic. There's like a genetic a problem, so they could never really pinpoint. There's several lung diseases or lung problems that I fit perfectly under the category of, but don't 100% match. So therefore, I was classified as non-specific chronic lung disease. Basically, when I was 5 years old, I was in the hospital for several months, doing all types of. I was in a children's hospital in Temple, Texas, and shout out to them because they, basically, I don't know, to say they saved my life. I mean, they definitely, at the very least, they prolonged my life to where maybe I could heal naturally or something. I don't know exactly what happened. I'll explain that on a later episode. It's pretty crazy, but they did an excellent job of taking care of me. And basically, I don't even know where I was going with this. I kind of spaced out, having flashbacks. But basically, I was in the hospital for several months. I don't know the exact time period off the top of my head. I need to ask my mom and dad, but I was getting worse and worse over time. I, for the most part, stayed on IVIGs, which is intravenous immunoglobulin. That's basically just when you go to the hospital and they put a needle, a bag of fluids to hook to you, and that's how they give you a lot of medicines, is through that IV. And that's also how they keep you hydrated if you're not drinking enough. I have scars on my arm, like the crook of my left arm, from having an IV for so long that it actually, your body starts to try and grow that into you. Basically, it's kind of gross, but anyways, shit, I'm gonna have to re-listen to this because I don't even know where I was going with this, but I was in the hospital for several months, was given all types of different medicines, including some that were experimental, and to sum it all up, they didn't tell me, I didn't know this until I was older, but they told my parents that I wasn't going to live much longer. So, and there wasn't much they could do for me at that point. So they were going to unhook me from most of the stuff. I wasn't on life support, but I did constantly do breathing treatments. I did do, there's a machine that they still use it, but it's a lot more advanced now. There's a machine that looked almost like a washer, and that I would be like strapped into on the inside, and it shakes you, and it shakes all the gross shit out of your lung, or not out of your lungs, shakes it loose from your lungs so you can cough it up. And so they unhooked me from basically everything. I think they sent me home with an IV still in me. Yeah, they did. But basically off everything else. And at one point, I got off the IV completely while I was at home. But I had gotten to the point where I was, coughing up blood and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I'm just going to finish this story, and then I'm going to have to go back on this audio and figure out where I was going with this. I'm sorry, guys, but I basically, they said there's basically that I was going to die and to take me home and do whatever I wanted, whatever they wanted with me, meaning like if they wanted to go on a family trip or whatever, just spend time with me at home, because I was several hours from home. That I didn't live in Temple, so yeah, just basically go spend time with me before I die. And I healed, and I'm alive. And then from there, the cool thing is they told me that they're like, well, you're, I mean, I'm not healed. I still, for example, if I get sick from, like I get a pneumonia or upper respiratory infection, sinus infection or whatever, it takes a lot longer for me to heal from that and recover, because my lungs are just predisposed to being weaker or just, out of service, for lack of a better term, for a longer period than somebody normally would. And it's probably just from damage, they said that they're like, well, you're alive, but you'll never be able to play sports. You'll never be able to, run, do anything like that. And, I played kind of, not out of anger, but I guess to prove them wrong or whatever. I played almost every sport that I had access to. Track and field. I didn't do track because I've always hated running, but I especially hate running with the condition of my lungs. I can, but I didn't do that. I did shot put, discus for several years, played baseball, played football for several years, played basketball for 1 year. All that, all through elementary and high school, junior high, high school. And then on my 21st birthday, instead of getting drunk or whatever, which I know not a lot of people are like this, but I truly don't really have a taste or enjoyment for alcohol. So what I did for my 21st birthday was go run a 5K with my wife. And it's supposed to be kind of like a fun run. I think it was called a color run or something. It was at night, and you'd go through these different checkpoints, and you're supposed to wear white, and they'd smash you with these like UV paints, and that was like super fun. But I did run that, I guess, competitively. Like I didn't want to. I knew there's no way I would like be first, and I wasn't really racing anyone. It was more like proving to myself, like kind of like fuck what you said type thing. But I did really good on that run, and I'm proud of that. But Anyways, I've always been super into fitness in some form or fashion. My dad did the bodybuilding, which I've already spoken about on our first couple episodes, and I actually interviewed my dad, which was really cool. But that's where the whole weightlifting thing primarily came from, and I truly do love football. So that had another big, effect on my life, I guess. Yeah, let me stop and see where the hell I was going with that. Okay, sorry about that. I went back on the audio and figured out where I lost track. I was getting to the point about explaining lung functionality. So when you have lung disease and you're monitoring that, I would go to sometimes it was an actual like lung specialist or a children's I think pulmonology specialist. I don't know, but it got to where I could just do lung function tests at my allergist's clinic. So I'd go in and get allergy shots and then do what's called a PFT, pulmonary functionality test. And it's if you've ever seen a breathing treatment, it's a similar setup to that. It's a plastic device that you put into your mouth. You kind of bite down on the hard plastic, and you breathe. Basically, the nurses count it out, and so they'll say, they'll be like 1, 2, 3, breathe, whatever. I can't do it. I'm getting tongue tied, but they'll tell you to breathe a bunch, and you do one big ass, basically as deep and as long of an inhale as you can. And then you do as deep and as long of an exhale as you can. And from those calculations, they have a, basically you'll watch the graph on the computer and it charts it out, and then it tells you exactly what your small airway flow and everything is. There's a million things that it measures, but it's basically telling how well your lungs are working. They know your height and weight and what your lung capacity should be, so they can tell how much you breathe in and how much you breathe out. And so that all circles back around to the lung functionality training and breathing technique. So regardless of what type of athlete you are, whether you're just jogging on the weekends to lose some weight or whatever, or for heart health, or you're a full-blown strength and conditioning athlete, or a football player or whatever, like breathing properly is such a key fundamental. You can go on YouTube, you can do different breathing techniques, and not fun because a lot of people don't like to do it, but the cool thing about it is that there's so many different breathing techniques. So there's a certain way to breathe when you're lifting heavy weights. There's also certain types of breathing to do when you're doing like explosive training. But also, it boils down all the way to breathing techniques to help you relax and manage anxiety. Breathing techniques to help you meditate. There's breathing techniques to help you go to sleep better if you have problem falling asleep or getting a good night's sleep. I don't know. It's very, very much worth looking into. The other thing is core engagement. you want to basically study up on how and when to engage your core. A good thing, I mean, you should basically have a strong core that isn't, you're not pushing it out while you're lifting. Like you want it to almost feel like that's a brick wall. So you want to teach yourself how to be able to engage your core, which strengthens, provides strength to your spine and your hips as well. You want to be able to learn how to engage your core while still doing the breathing techniques, and that is what is probably, in my opinion, the thing that keeps people the most focused during exercises to prevent injury, from a mental state. But it also is just like the foundation in which training should be built upon. Anyways, I greatly appreciate everybody that's been listening to these episodes. We are growing, and I'm grateful for that. I'm happy to be alive. I'm glad I can breathe. And if you're listening to this and you like it, share it with somebody. That's what helps me the most. You can follow the podcast at Way of Life Podcast on Instagram. You can also email me at wayoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for listening, and I will talk to y'all next week.